Hello, and welcome to the second episode of The Young People. I'm your host, Ben Feldman. Our first episode about transgender issues was aired over the summer. However, since then, we have been off the air for quite some time. So first, I would like to extend my apologies for our brief 3-month hiatus, as I'm a college student and my life is pain. Today, we'll be discussing an organization our team has been in contact with that many of you may have heard of. A group easily accessible to a modest, humble show such as ours. I know. I don't know why they returned our calls either. I have no idea. But let it never be said that the young people do not shoot for the moon. But more specifically, we've been working on a piece regarding the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, and you should know that our crack research team here at the show has been working overtime to get us back on air with this story. Can we get a picture of our research team up? And there he is, shown doing the best he can. We have fun on the show, but in all seriousness, if you are watching this, then your goal today is to learn about the resources available to all the brave individuals who have served dutifully in the United States military. A list of all the numbers and resources we discuss, and even more that we do not, will be provided at the end of the program. However, today we will be learning about some of the struggles that our nation's bravest often find themselves fighting each and every day, a testament to their true strength and resolve. But it is a battle that, difficult as it may be to acknowledge, is almost impossible to win alone. There are truly remarkable individuals whose goal is to offer aid to the soldiers who risk their health and well-being to aid others. However, many people are only able to offer words that can ring hollow to veterans who've experienced things in wartime that most individuals cannot even fathom. I make no attempt to imply that I am any more knowledgeable about the weight most of our veterans carry with them. Though, when we take the opportunity to speak with them, even as they fight their own internal battles, it is vitally important that the words you offer are the best they can be and educated enough to help in some small way. Because the consequences speak for themselves, and both civilians and veterans are often too late to hear them. In 2013, the Department of Veteran Affairs released a report regarding veteran suicide rates, with data limited only to 3 million medical records gathered from the Veterans Health Administration. Then, in 2016, now through the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention, the VA released a report detailing the findings of the nation's largest analysis of veteran suicide to date. Over 55 million veterans' records were viewed from facilities in all 50 states dating from shortly after the Vietnam War all the way to 2014. The reports concluded a number of facts about our veterans, showing, among other things, that with the recorded number of suicides, an average of 20 veterans take their own lives each day. In order to combat the increasing statistic, the VA has made a push to bolster their existing mental health services by increasing their psych-related staffing at VA medical centers, expanding the staffing and coverage of the Veterans Crisis Line, and establishing more VA vet centers. For those of you who don't know, vet centers are community-based counseling centers that provide a wide range of social and psychological services, including counseling to veterans and active duty service members. There are 300 community-based vet centers and 80 mobile vet centers located across the U.S., and accessing counseling there is as simple as calling up or visiting the location closest to you. Because unlike some veteran services, you, 1, do not need to be enrolled with VA medical centers to access them, 2, do not need a disability rating or a service connection for your injuries from either the VA or the Department of Defense, and 3, you can access vet center services regardless of the type of discharge you may have received. Generally, in order to receive VA benefits and services, the veteran's character of discharge or service must be under other than dishonorable conditions. For example, honorable, under honorable conditions, or general, as stated by VA policy. However, individuals receiving an other than honorable discharge or bad conduct discharge may qualify for VA benefits depending on a character of service determination, a CSD, made by the VA. Now, this is important. If a veteran has either a service-connected injury or illness, at least 2 years of active duty service, or has received at least one honorable discharge, they will still be able to enroll in the VA healthcare system. The VA will submit Form 7131, an information exchange between VA regional offices and medical facilities, and make a character of service determination to decide if their service was honorable for VA purposes, honorable for medical purposes, or still dishonorable. Veterans with an other than honorable discharge who qualify for VA health care are still eligible to submit claims for disability compensation pay, participate in educational, volunteer vocational rehabilitation programs, and if the VA determines their service to be honorable for VA purposes, they may be eligible for the GI Bill to still cover schooling costs as well. You can locate your local VA hospitals, vet centers, and benefit offices by going to the link below and searching for the facilities closest to you. Now, this all sounds wonderful. But the scandals of the VA in recent years are widely known to the American people. From the falsification to patient records to put on a fake appearance of high patient success rates, to the abysmally long waiting lists, putting some veterans with serious physical or mental traumas months away from necessary appointments or claims approvals. In his ongoing effort to create a more transparent VA, Secretary of Veteran Affairs David Shulkin has sought major reforms within the organization to hold the individuals tarnishing the VA's reputation accountable. During his nomination hearing before the Senate Committee of Veteran Affairs, Shulkin stated that there will be far greater accountability, dramatically improved access, responsiveness, and expanded care options. But the Department of Veteran Affairs will not be privatized under my watch. The concern about privatization referring in part to the controversies of the Veterans Access, Choice, and Accountability Act signed into law in 2014 by former President Obama, which privatizes health care in much the same fashion as food pantries for hungry families spread the socialist agenda. It works with local hospitals to allow veterans to utilize their own primary care providers and make medical care more accessible for veterans in their community, because they are not able to be seen by their closest VA facility within 30 days of when they would like to. Perhaps they live more than 40 miles away from the nearest VA facility, or they are otherwise unable to travel to their hospital easily. Go to the website below to see if you are eligible for this as well. And it's all well and good to say that VA care will be improved by this increased oversight. But when researching the story, I've gone through report after report from the Office of the Inspector General, a branch of the VA created to investigate reports of misconduct at VA facilities. This program is taped on November 20th. The last report from the office was submitted on the 16th. And since our last program in August to now, there have been 36 reports filed. You can find these reports, as well as others like them, at the office's website, also given below. We're going to refer now to some of these reports, and the case numbers for all of them will be listed at the end of the program for reference, because I'd like to impress upon you all, these are all real. Delayed access to primary care, contaminated reusable medical equipment, and follow-up of registered nursing staffing concerns in the Southern Arizona VA healthcare system in Tucson. Allegations regarding patients' delayed access to primary care and contaminated reusable medical equipment at the center were substantiated in this report. Patient death following failure to attempt resuscitation in the VA Ann Arbor healthcare system in Michigan. A patient who arrested and died at the center was found that a nurse caring for the patient incorrectly informed staff members that the patient had a do not attempt to resuscitate order, a wrong status that the team then acted upon, and the patient died. Healthcare inspection of the Central California VA healthcare system in Fresno. There were issues regarding the patient's length of stay, poor inpatient flow, and nurse staffing shortages all throughout the center. They acknowledged issues with emergency department boarded patients' length of stay, as well as they have not implemented actions as they're written up in the past. An evaluation of a system-wide clinical practice in Oklahoma City VA Health Center. A comprehensive review identified multiple program areas, processes, and operations needing improvement. Without strong and effective leadership, an inattentive or apathetic organizational culture evolved that allowed problems to arise and persist. Review of claims processing actions at pension management centers. The department found St. Paul staff failed to act according to general medical examinations to support veterans' pension claims, denying 88% of those requiring rating decisions. They also delayed and inaccurately processed pension benefit reduction cases whenever beneficiaries resided in Medicaid-covered nursing care facilities. In an audit of the VBA's National Pension Call Center in Philadelphia, supervisors did not review or take corrective actions for calls evaluated by quality review specialists. Calls in Spanish were not even included in the Benefit Assistance Service quality review monitoring, the purpose of which to help give information to individuals trying to work within the system. They're all basically more of the same. It is very easy to be upset by reports like these. But to Secretary Shulkin's credit, the new Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection is working overtime to improve the transparency of the VA and show the quantifiable work they're doing to hold individuals accountable for their actions. They've been posting statistics of all suspensions lasting 14 days or greater, demotions, and removals of VA personnel from VA organizations across the country. To date, there have been 70 recorded demotions, 1,199 removals from previously held positions, and 392 suspensions for misconduct since the program start in July of 2017. Now, do not misunderstand. The VA is an integral institution for the well-being of American veterans. My own ability to convey all the services they cover is limited by time, as we could do entire shows about the incredibly low interest loans afforded to veterans, the lower mortgage rates veterans can benefit from for all houses on the market, life insurance policies, support groups, pension opportunities, occupational training and employment programs for veterans in advanced fields, education cost coverage through the GI Bill, various avenues to access dental and medical care through the VA, and assistance in applying for disability compensation. On a hopeful note, one of the last conclusions made by the Suicide Prevention Report shows the importance and effectiveness of these services to veterans. Since 2001, the rate of suicide amongst male veterans who did not utilize these services from the VA increased by 35%, but the rate of increase was only 11% amongst veterans who had. And the rate of suicide amongst female veterans who did not utilize VA services increased by a staggering 98%, but only a 4.6% increase for those who did. A link to the full 48-page report can be found at the web address below. As I've mentioned, my ability to guide you through the eligibility requirements and minutiae of many of the VA services is limited by time. But a list of toll-free numbers for information regarding the various benefits and services offered by the VA can be found on their website. Another resource is the 24/7 Veterans Crisis Line, which provides immediate access to mental health crisis intervention and support. Veterans call the crisis line at 1-800-273-8255 and then press 1 to reach highly skilled responders trained in suicide prevention and crisis intervention for veterans in need of help. the deaf and hard of hearing can contact the Lifeline at 1-800-799-4889. Information about the crisis line is also available at their website below. And we've barely touched upon the numerous organizations not linked to the VA or Department of Defense that aid veterans in a variety of ways. As said, a more comprehensive list will be provided at the end of the program. Though before we get to our guests for tonight, I would be doing a great disservice if I did not briefly cover perhaps one of the most amazing groups accessible to veterans. I speak now directly to any and all veterans who may be watching the program now. The VA's Veterans Crisis Line is staffed by individuals ready to handle breakdowns or individuals at risk of self-harm or suicide. They are trained to be able to guide you away from the edge. But many of them are not veterans and don't fully understand the weight that you may shoulder every day. And you may not feel comfortable going to a support group at the VA either, but please know that you can talk about what you deal with someone who understands exactly how it feels because they've gone through the same things. The Vets for Warriors organization is a 24/7 phone line not affiliated with the DoD or the VA that offers veterans the opportunity to just speak with another veteran. They're staffed primarily by male and female Army and Marine Corps personnel that you can speak with about anything. Your fellow veterans understand what you're going through and are offering the opportunity to speak with them. What you talk about is entirely confidential, and you do not even have to give your name if you don't want to. When you call their number at 1-855-838-8255, you'll be immediately connected to a veteran who is there to listen to their brothers and sisters in arms. They can help you figure out the next step, remind you about support group appointments that you want to make, or, and this is quite possibly the most amazing thing, they'll just check in with you to make sure that you're doing all right. If you leave a number to be contacted back on, the veteran who you've spoken with will be able to do follow-up calls for as long as you request, or you can simply play it by ear. Call or go visit their website below at vetsforwarriors.com. Now, my first guest for the evening is John Tinney, who served from 1990 to 1998 in the U.S. Army stationed in Germany, then deployed to Middle East for combat duty during Operation Desert Storm, after which he returned stateside as a reservist, leaving as a specialist. Then, in 2002 through 2011, served in the U.S. Navy Reserve, deployed twice in Kuwait, and leaving as a petty officer first class. John, it is good to hear from you again. So I guess there's a lot that we have to talk about. There's a lot that we've covered so far. One of the things that we're hoping to bring up is discussions on what you have gone through as a veteran interfacing with the VA, going through their reimbursement processes, and also just dealing with your own physical injuries and mental injuries from active service. So you were injured during, well, no, you weren't injured during the service, but it was exacerbated by your time spent overseas, correct?
Correct.
Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Well, my last tour overseas, best way to put it, I worked a lot of hours, 20, 22 hours at a time. And you get 4 to 5 hours of sleep. The longest I was awake for, 37 hours.
And there was a mental strain.
Then I was back at it 4 hours later.
There's definitely a mental strain to the work that you had to do, clearly. And during your last deployment, you were also responsible for maintaining the safety of veterans returning home from service. Is that correct?
Yes. Part of my job, about halfway through the deployment, was to escort people to the airport and make certain they got on a civilian flight.
I understand that you were kept very much in a state of awareness. You need to always be looking for threats because there were a lot of dangers to U.S. military personnel overseas during that time. And there was a point where I believe your supervisors were aware of this strain on you and were trying to talk with you about it. And that was, I believe, around when you had gotten your medical, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the word.
I was medically evacuated from overseas
Right.
due to stress.
Mm-hmm.
Corpsman, who I was very good friends with, recognized something was going on and made it a point to get me to the docks
Mm-hmm.
before I did something that I wasn't going to walk away from.
Looking back on it, do you think that was the right call to make?
Absolutely.
Now, going back to your interactions with the VA, though, a lot of your experience with them has been trying to go through their disability claims department and basically get a reimbursement for the issues that you've dealt with as a result of your service. And that has been difficult, to say the
Yes.
least.
Difficult is definitely a word I would use. Sometimes it would be akin to pulling teeth without anesthesia. Every so often it goes smoothly and painlessly.
So you were kept in limbo for a very long time, though. I believe it was something to the tune of like nearly a year.
Yes.
And during that, were they telling you you didn't have your documents organized? Was it an issue that they weren't following correct protocol? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't have a claim go through. And I mean, did they express that at any point?
I was required to refile twice.
Why?
If I remember correctly, once they lost the document, and the second time they said I didn't send something when I had proof that I did.
I'm sorry, did you say they lost the document?
They lost a complete application. They knew I applied, but they lost paperwork on their end.
That is a deeply frustrating feeling, I would imagine. Oh, wow. But talking...
I admit to punching a wall.
That sounds about right, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I don't think that would go along with service-related injuries, but I mean, maybe that would count possibly. Sorry, that was not...
No, that's fine.
All right. But discussing issues from service, you have PTSD.
Yes.
And you see support...
The VA does not recognize its PTSD. It recognizes your depression.
Well, depression is one of the comorbidities normally with veterans returning with PTSD. It can express itself, and often does, alongside that.
Yes, it does.
The issue then, for them understanding it, the diagnosis, I'm guessing, wasn't connected to something during service in their mind that would make that connection? I mean, I'm not exactly sure why they think that.
I had a psychiatrist that I was speaking with, psychologist, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
They don't prescribe psychiatrists.
Right.
I had a psychologist explain to me that while I met all the criteria for it, he believed claims and pensions felt I dealt with it far better than I had any right to, I guess. Rephrase. The psychologist said I had a wonderful coping mechanism for the issue. And I did
could you repeat that last part?
a outstanding job in his view to keep it affecting my life. C&P decided it was just depression.
So basically, if you
There's
had
enough
been,
similarities.
sorry, so if you had been basically like throwing civilians through walls and like punching things, then they would have been basically, oh yeah, no, that's definitely PTSD. But the fact that you were handling it and doing well meant that I
was functional.
yes. That doesn't mean the same thing, though, and I think we both know that. I'm not suggesting that you're not functional. I'm saying that that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't deal with issues arriving from PTSD, every day. And you utilize support groups in your community, correct?
I see a counselor at the VA once a month. Schedule allows it. Thanks. Working as a part-timer at various EMS agencies,
Mm-hmm.
I can usually get the time to go see my counselor.
That is an important thing to be able to do, and honestly, your experience with the VA is mirrored in a lot of individuals that have had similar problems, and hopefully we've been able to let people know a little bit more about that today. Thank you very much, John, for speaking with us, and thank you for your service.
Thank you for asking, Ben.
Mm-hmm. Important that we do that. Once again, thank you very much to our guest, John Tinney, and his very important look into interactions with the Department of Veteran Affairs. Now, my last guest for tonight is Forrest Dougan, who served from 2005 to 2008 in the U.S. Army before leaving with an honorable discharge as a specialist. Author of the book Things Written on a Men's Room Wall, which will be out early 2018 and available on Barnes & Noble and iTunes. Forrest, you there?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very, very much for being with us today. The first thing we're probably going to be talking about is the rating and treatment that you received from the VA. Now, for starters, could you please explain what a rating is for people at home that might not be aware?
It is the national standard in which they determine how disabled a veteran is, going in the lowest percentage to the highest.
And normally it has to do with the amount of injury and how it relates to a service incident, and determines normally what benefits are able to receive and how great the compensation is able to be. Like someone with a higher rating is getting more compensation than someone with a lower, for example. Yes?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, your rating took quite a long time to be delivered, though. It was more than a year, wasn't it?
Yes, it was approximately 2 to 2.5.
What the fuck? That is insane.
Well, it backlogged. A lot of policies changed during that time, but I still feel that I was processed much faster than other veterans, especially at that time.
Wow, and you had a bit of assistance, though, from the VA trying to work through the process, hopefully, right?
Not just the VA, but outside sources as well, such as Wounded Warrior and the Disabled American Veterans, the DAV.
They are an organization that is a nonprofit that is dedicated to also helping veterans with a lot of services as well, and tends to help them interact with the VA for those at home. One of the things, though, that we are going to be speaking about is, Forrest, a lot of you came home physically injured, but also you do have PTSD as well from your service in wartime. Is that correct?
Yes.
I know that a lot of veterans find it difficult to discuss events that have gone on during their active service, and you've expressed it is difficult sometimes to convey to friends and family specific events that have gone on. Is that also correct?
Yes, marginally so even.
Well, how do you mean?
I mean that it's very difficult to discuss certain issues and experiences that are experienced in the military with individuals that haven't served.
They have no frame
That's
of
a
context.
issue.
There's no frame of context. It's difficult to know exactly what the crossover is and how to understand that. One of the things I remember that we have discussed, though, is the Vets for Warriors hotline and the work that they do.
Yes, I think they save lives.
That is definitely, I would have to agree with you there. I actually called them, and I was immediately impressed by the honest candor they had, and there was a genuine desire to help from people that are able to understand, and that's an important thing for people, I know.
I completely agree. There's a lot of reconciling and understanding with the soldier as well as the veteran, and they understand the acronyms. They speak that language.
I understand that also it's difficult sometimes to deal with that mental aspect, though, because physical injuries can heal, but I know a lot of the members of your unit, you lost more to suicide than to even active combat.
Yes, while that is somewhat of a rare statistic, it is a factual one. And that is something with the 22 vets that die on average a day that is finally getting properly addressed by not only the VA, but the rest of America as well.
The VA, the United States military doesn't have a say very much in VA policy. I mean, it's understandable to the extent where you don't have someone determining like where funding goes, but not even an advisory role does the U.S. military play in the VA. And that was something that a lot of veterans don't seem to think makes sense either.
Oh, yeah. It's a problem. Since roughly Vietnam, the military has pulled out of working with the Veteran Affairs. And a lot of veterans would feel better working with the Department of Defense and various departments of the military to oversee the care and treatment of us veterans.
Because once again, it's that frame of context. It's being able to have someone that understands exactly what the situation is.
Absolutely.
It makes sense. One of the things also that we're going to discuss, you brought this up to me, and there's a lot of issues in society as well with being a veteran. There's that disconnect from civilians who are not really able to understand on that level issues faced during active service, but also something you brought up when going for employment, questions 12A and B on most employment documents in the United States. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I wouldn't say most. It was a very particular incident. A certain large chain of business, question 12A was, did you serve in the United States military? Question 12B was, do you have PTSD, TBI, and a few other acronyms? It was one of the saddest days of my life.
How so?
I knew I'd never get that job with those little acronyms hanging over my head.
A lot of people are under-equipped to sort of help people and after the conflicts that they're involved in, but as you said, there seems to be a trend of the American people deciding that the treatment of veterans is not going to stand to be terrible and disgusting and not going to ignore that anymore, and I think that's definitely a positive change. And I think that you see this too to some extent, yes?
Yes, it's come leaps and bounds in the several decades since the Vietnam era veterans, the Gulf War era veterans, OEF and OIF veterans, and even future reference veterans issues are going to be better equipped as we move forward because they have the tools now to do so.
Yeah, those programs, they weren't always there. A lot of them are only recently formed now to help veterans out.
Yes. Yes, they are. They've come a long way. They're getting a lot more feedback, a lot more public funding.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of outside concerned citizens are funding a lot of the programs that we use and utilize at the VA, from my own experiences as well as other veterans that I know nationally, not just locally, but nationally.
I mean, it's at a much larger level. And you and also friends of yours do use support services at the VA, like different outreach groups, correct?
Absolutely. Twice a week, every week.
Yeah. And you also, I mean, it's important to you to take part in this as well. I mean, I remember you've told me that you volunteer sometimes for the helplines when you have the ability to.
Occasionally, not as much as I'd like to. It is something I'd like to pursue more.
Mm-hmm. But the whole thing is, if people were able to get involved more and do things that are important to them and helping with this issue, then it becomes less of a problem. And it's that drive that people really need to latch on to. The goal to make things better for people who need help and for people that deserve help. Veterans do a lot for the country, and it doesn't make sense to have them be treated in a way any less than what they deserve. So I'm glad that trend is changing as well.
So am I. I think people want to help each other. I think they always do. Sometimes it's not knowing how to help. And there's more available services and organizations and groups out there now than there has ever been in previous years. There's several large changes coming to the VA in the upcoming years and several other projects that go live in 2018 all the way out to 2020.
Forrest, thank you so much for speaking with us about a topic that always seems to need to be addressed, but hopefully we're getting to the point where it's getting better. And I mean, everything we're talking about today is going to be improving. And thank you for your service, and thank you for being on our show today.
Thank you as well, Ben. You have a great day.
All right. And I think we all agree with Forrest that we hope that things will improve for the future of veterans of the United States of America. Now, everyone, thank you so much for being with us. And if we're able to help illustrate things even a little bit more clearly for everyone watching, then please consider sharing this to whoever might benefit from our discussion about America's bravest. Thank you very much, and good night.